Testing 1, 2, 3. Well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, 5:30 somewhere, right? My name is Aaron LeBeau. I'm a developer advocate at Couchbase. Welcome to another Friday session of streaming some ASP.NET coding here. So this is Custoda's Coding Bits. My name is Aaron LeBeau, and we're going to go through and do some coding today. So we'll see what's going on, see how far we make it. We are on Visual Studio for the Mac. That is the platform that I'm preferring today. Doesn't mean I won't code on other platforms. In fact, I'll be streaming tomorrow, and there's a good chance I might be using VS Code because of the fact I recently got invited to the their new beta for GitHub's beta for the artificial intelligence coding package that they have. 1 second, where is it? I had it open just a little bit ago. And I have to say that their Copilot, that's what the plugin's called, is pretty amazing. I played with it only for a few minutes, and I was like, okay, well, that's definitely worth some research going into. VS Code, I've kind of been on the record before of saying it's not necessarily my favorite platform for coding in, but taking a look at it and taking a look at this Copilot option, I have to admit the IntelliSense is pretty good. So it's definitely something that I'll probably take a look at tomorrow. Coding the same platform that we're currently working on today. So it is Friday, and where we left off last session was we went through and got ourselves a single API up and running called user profile, and you can send it an ID and it'll go get one from the database. And if we go look at the database, we should be able to go look at our bucket and go look at here and find our documents. You can see we have a lonely document right now, but we should be able to grab this document's ID. And if all of our codes are still working, we should be able to try that out by going into our friend Swagger, pasting that ID in, and execute. And we'll see here what's going on. I do not have the project debugging yet, so of course it does not work. So let me debug that real quick. Helps when the project's actually running. I forgot that I had stopped debugging a little bit ago. I did launch it before the stream started just to make sure that it worked, because that'd be kind of silly to have it go on a stream and then have it not work. But it takes a few seconds to compile, and there we are. We're starting to get some output from the ASP.NET. And now it should be working. So let's go ahead and try that again. 200 response, and there is our user. So that came from the database rather than being hard-coded this time. And that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and stop our debugging. So when we kind of looked at at the end of last session, we kind of admitted that, I admitted that there's definitely several things that I'm not necessarily doing great. And obviously within development, you want to just kind of slowly build things up. So one of the things that was happening is in Couchbase service, we've got a lot of code here that goes in and grabs things, and this was just a way that we could code it up. And then Couchbase config we use to basically go in and get the cluster information, okay? And that's how we are kind of going through and setting up the connection. So somewhere in our repository, let's go find our user repository. Let's see here. It's based on our base repository because we inherit, and we did a bunch of cool stuff there. We go get a bucket, and then once we get a bucket, we can get a collection and then a document from the collection. And that's kind of how our code works right now. But one of the things that we had to come up with is that in our startup, not program startup, we're hard-coding the username and password. Not 100% flexible here, folks. So if we go find it, there's our cluster init. So we're going in there, we're initting a cluster. That is not best practices. And this is something that I just put in. There's a to-do here. So I can go into Visual Studio, and there is a window that you can see all these to-dos. And let's see, other windows. And where is the to-do window? That's debug. The tasks window, there it is. You can see here, here's all the different to-do notes I wrote myself from last stream. And so one of the goals is to try to get all this figured out. And so this is like your notes of, hey, I didn't do my homework yet, or I didn't do certain things yet. This gives you the ability to go back and finish those. So that's one of the very first things we'll see here, that we need to go fix that. And I'm pretty sure that is one of them, and then right here. So that's a good point to be made, is that we have another Nuget package that will do this a little bit better for us. And that's something called Dependency Injection at Couchbase. This is a separate Nuget package, and we can bring it in, and what it will do is it will handle some of the dependency injection for us. So if we go look at Nuget, we can see that here's the package. We can see that it depends on our Couchbase net client, which we already have the Nuget package for. It says something greater than 320. And then a couple of Microsoft's extensions for dependency injection. That would kind of make sense, right? And of course, reflection, because that's probably how it's doing its DI. So we can use this package. Now, we are running 322 of the .NET client, but you can see here it says greater than 320, which means even though the newer version of the .NET client's out there, we should be okay. So let's go ahead and start that. So we can do that by going into our Nuget, going to Manage Nuget Packages by right-clicking and selecting that. And we can see here, these are the ones we have installed right now. In fact, you can also click Updates and see if there's any updates that are available. And there's no updates being available, but you can see this is what we currently have. And it looks like I already have dependency injection installed. So I recently did that, and we're on actually 323 of the .NET client. So how does this all work then? How do we get this up and running? Well, one, we want to take this kind of information, but we want to take it out of hard-coded and put it into our configuration file. Because if we do it there, the advantage is that we can have a different configuration for different environments, different build types. And when you're trying to do CI/CD, this instantly starts to change the game quite a bit. This makes it so that you can go through and change it so that if you have, like right now, this is which file is this? This is development.json. So this is app settings.development.json. You could have a separate file called app settings.uat.json that has a totally different configuration inside of it. And you also could pull that down from like Azure Key Vault, for example, which is probably the best recommendation, to tell you the truth. You should not hard code your users inside your config file. You should probably pull that in from like something like Azure. Since this is just we're just kind of playing around and stuff, I'm not going to go that serious because then I have to set up an Azure account and all that kind of stuff. But what I will do is I'm going to go ahead and at least get this to the point where we're pointing to it in the right spot. So I'm going to make a configuration option called Couchbase. And this is some JSON that I'm writing here. And then for right now, we're going to keep track of a couple different things we care about. So one we don't care about the bucket name per se, but we do care about the username. We care about the password. And then we also care about the connection string. And that's going to be right now Couchbase localhost. Now, username and password, we know that we're hard coding that to administrator. And this is password. I don't remember if it's capital P or not. But that's what, well, let's go take a look at our startup. What's our startup say? It says lowercase. So that should be the same stuff we have there. Okay. And that is our configuration now that we can pull, hopefully, from the configuration instead of the Couchbase. Now, there's a couple other things going on here, some magic sauce behind the scenes that this new framework does. And what we should be able to do is tell the registration service to use that stuff. So usually what ends up happening is that you have to configure the Couchbase server, set up the Couchbase configuration from the configuration file. Sorry, I'm brain farting here. All right, so let's take a look here. It is Friday, by the way, and we had a long week. It was Connect this week. It was a pretty long week, but I had a lot of fun. So if we're looking here, what we should see is we have add controllers. We're in our configuration right now in startup. So if we go look at our configuration, what we're going to do is, I'm trying to decide where I want to add this. So we have, this is the Couchbase service. So we definitely want it before here because we want to have Couchbase live before there. So we should be able to say something like services.configure. Wait, why? Oh, I'm spelling services wrong. Really, it's not going to, the telesense is not going to work again today. Boy, this could be a long stream. And we could say Couchbase config. And we know that that's that object we have. We can say configuration. There we go. That get section. And we know that our section name was Couchbase. That's what we just made a few seconds ago in our JSON file, right? So that should set it up to say, hey, we're going to go through and grab that from the configuration file. Now what we should be able to do is we should be able to add Couchbase via the dependency injection framework that Nuget package we added. And we can go look at the documentation there real quick. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's see here. It's very light documentation, but basically we go in here, we say that, we want to add Couchbase in as from the service. And then we're going to go in and add a bucket provider, something we don't have any code to do yet. So that's what they're saying here that we need to do. And then we can inject in some buckets, and I'll explain that in a second. But according to our documentation here, we need to add this in right here. So let's go in and add in that line of code. Now, of course, add Couchbase is not going to work because of the fact that we need to add in a using statement to say we want to use that new Couchbase extension's dependency injection. Oop, I did not mean that. Undo. Try that again. So using on that, and that should get us up and running. So that should add in based on the Couchbase configuration section we have. And we can also grab other things from this configuration now because of the fact that we're reloading it in. So that's also kind of cool is the fact that technically speaking, even though Couchbase needs this stuff, we could add in more. Say for example, well, I've done this in the past, is maybe you need to hit the REST API for some reason, right? And so that's something that you'd want to track the URL for your cluster. So what you could do is you could say REST endpoint, and then we could say, hey, that REST endpoint is going to be HTTP localhost. This is on port 8091. Does that make sense? That makes sense. Yeah. And so we could add that in. Now, that's not needed for the Couchbase injection stuff. However, it's useful for me if I need to call the REST API. Because it's going to be in this configuration, and I'll read it in, and then I can use that as a configuration object. So that's something cool in ASP.NET. That is an option out there. You can see here and that's because we're setting it in here. So we also, basically, we can get it in two different ways. We need to send it to Couchbase, but also we can put some extra settings in there that Couchbase may not need, but we may need for our individual code. So that's what we're getting at there. So what the heck's this iBucket stuff? And that's a good question. Let's go back to the documentation. We're going to grab the interface name. And so the interface name they tell you here is that you need to inherit from iBucket name provider. Okay. And so we need to make some interfaces for this. So let's go back to our code now. And let's get our solution open. So we need I recommend doing this in our repository. Well, probably not our repository, our service. So let's do this. We're going to say new file. Let's type of interface. But we're not going to call this a name bucket. We're going to say this gems. The iGems bucket provider. Okay. And according to the Couchbase documentation, we need to inherit from this interface. So let's go ahead and do that. Now there's some magic sauce going on here. We don't need to put any implementation in here. We just need to have this interface. That seems weird, right? But let me explain. So what we do is we can say we want to implement that interface, and we can call in some abstract code that interface provides, or excuse me, that the Nuget package provides to basically get an implementation for that for free. And it will go through and get us a bucket. We don't have to write any code to get buckets then. And that's pretty neat. That's going to save us some code to manage. And so, technically if the SDK's code changes, we don't care because this wrapper around it's going to provide that implementation for us. If you go look at it, they tell you here that all we need to do is add in like this line right here. So we're going to add in this line of code. So let's go back to go ahead and go into here and say, now we're going to do this, but it's not my iBucket provider. It's my iGems bucket provider. And it's not called my bucket. It's called gems, right? And I think it's all caps. Let's go look at the UI for Couchbase admin portal. What do we got here? It is all caps. We can see it right here. So that's our bucket that we're storing our database in. So now we can refactor some of our code this time. We don't need to go and get buckets anymore. This will go get buckets for us. And we just have to inject that code into our repository, for example. So when we go look at our base repository, this is going to be the trick, though, is that this is going to have a... we need to get it working with our inheritance, right? Because we're saying that we need to get a bucket. Who gives us a bucket? The Couchbase service gets us a bucket. So actually, let's go back. I think we can fix this in Couchbase service. So Couchbase service is what goes through and gets buckets. So inside of Couchbase service, we're going to be able to pass in the bucket provider that we're looking for. And so we can just simply say, so is iService just has an init based on this, which we won't need anymore because the database should be automatically, the buckets and stuff should automatically be handled for us. I'm going to keep this init cluster there, because we're going to need it for something else, but we're not going to need it necessarily for that. So I'm going to leave that there, but we're not going to run it anymore because like I said, the dependency injection service should handle that for us. And it's kind of explained in the documentation that it will handle lifecycle. And if we go back, take a look here, it tells you that it'll be injected in, and you're no longer required to know the name of bucket controller, so you can prove separations. And it does tell you for you could use the lifetime service to basically make sure that this is cool and that we're cleaning up. And I think we're already doing that, but we can go check that because that's the only other thing we'd have to worry about. But outside of that, we don't necessarily need this anymore, but we're going to need, I want to move this over to Capella, which is our new cloud-based solution. That way I don't have to run Couchbase on my local Mac, and I can just run it in the cloud. For that, though, we're going to want to make sure that, because it's in the cloud, it's no longer on my machine, we're going to want to make, when we run it, that it automatically goes through and makes the buckets and scopes for us. And so what I think we're going to do is we're going to reuse this init cluster to set up basically our bucket in the way that we want to be able to use it when the application launches. And we can actually load it in via a script, configuration. And so that if you're starting this, you could have different configuration could have different scope names and collection names, for example. And that sounds like it's pretty flexible. So the only thing we're worried about is in our life cycle here. So let's go take a look here and see if we have that in our life cycle. And I don't see it right now. I do see where we register. Well, right here we're doing it to register. But it's saying, well, one, it's saying that that variable doesn't work. So it's because it's app lifetime. So it's saying when application stopped, we're going to go in and get the Couchbase lifetime service and close it. And so let's make that a little bit easier to read because I think this will make it a little bit easier to read. And now we can see what's happening here. We're saying that when the application's stopping, we're going to close the database connection. We're going to make sure we get the service. We're going to close it, and then we're going to make sure it happens. The configure await false is to make it so that somebody doesn't try to run this synchronously. Sometimes somebody can try to override you telling that this should run asynchronously. And this kind of says, no, even if you want to try to run this synchronously, you really should run this asynchronously. There's a very long technical description for that, but for today, that is more than good enough, and you can look this up if you want to understand why. Now, we don't need this code anymore because this code should automatically happen. If we go look back at our documentation for the dependency, there is no where they say that. Instead, because we pass it in, if we go back to our dependency injection thing here, this right here handles that for us. So we can get rid of that code. That's going to save us a little bit of code. So right here, this I don't believe we need anymore. So we're going to go through and comment that out, and then we're going to try to do a debug and make sure that that actually worked. And if that's the case, then we can just nuke that code. We can also get rid of that because that should hopefully handle that for us. So since we made some changes, let's go ahead and debug, make sure that our API and stuff is still running. Guess we'll go back here and make sure, see how fast it is before we can deep run. So this is our application output. This will tell us what's going on. It's definitely running. We can see here. And we got a web page open. But we want to go back to this swagger because we already have the GUID and stuff. So let's go ahead and execute it again and see what happens. So we got an internal server error this time. So let's see what's going on. Status 500. Because we're getting the bucket the old way, not through the iname provider. That's what's going on. Because of the fact that we took this out, this is the way that we connect to the Couchbase server, but we need to use this iBucket methodology. So we're probably going to 500 because of that. Yeah, you can see here clusters, no, please run the init cluster first. And that's because we changed that out. So let's go ahead and fix that next. So I forgot all about that. So to solve this problem, we need to bring in to our service instead of, well, along with the I login, we want to bring in the I gems. See if we can get this to, we're going to get a IntelliSense to work for us today. And the answer is no, Aaron. You're not going to get, let's put the comment there and see if it now knows. And gems, there it goes. Maybe we will. Gems bucket provider. So let's add a read only for that. Gems bucket provider. We don't need the rest of that. We're going to call this gems bucket provider. And we'll just say gems bucket provider equals gems bucket provider. Okay. So now what happens is when we want to get a bucket, we no longer need cluster. So where the heck is cluster coming from? Right here. We no longer have to worry about the cluster. And where's that coming from? I know we had this. Not sure where we were setting that though. So I can set. We just have a logger in that. I'm not sure where we're getting that from. I'll have to go take a look here. And this is real coding, guys. I've been doing this a long time, but when you haven't looked at your code in a week, trying to figure out what's going on here, we don't need this anymore. We don't need this else either. And that means that all this code can go back one. And we can basically unindent this because that's the case. And the bucket comes from this I provider. So if we go look at our code example from the dependency documentation, you can see here we can just say provider get bucket async, and it should just get us that bucket. So that's the magic sauce here. So we went from having to manage this cluster and stuff to say no, we just want await gems bucket provider get bucket async. And that should do the exact same thing. It should go get us a bucket. But it's going to use this new code that we have that we don't have to manage the cluster anymore. So that's the advantage to this. And then, of course, let's see here. Oh, here's the init cluster. So this is where it was going in and setting the cluster. Totally makes sense. Let's comment this out right now. And I don't think, do we have this still in our startup? Did I leave it in there? I did not. I commented it up. So let's go back to Couchbase service. We'll keep this in here because I think we want to do something different with this though. I think this is where we're going to go in and set up our auto creation of collections and scopes eventually. So we probably will rename this though. Instead of init cluster, we'll rename that to refactor it to be init schema, database schema, or init bucket schema is probably. Let's do that now so we don't forget. So let's go ahead and just rename init bucket schema. Actually, init bucket setup would probably be better. Init bucket setup. That just makes more sense. Schema could be argued that, oh, are you doing a document thing or something like that? It's like, nope, 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 not that at all. And theoretically speaking, we won't need the Couchbase config anymore because the fact that we will have it via the iBucket provider. So we can take all this code out. Make this go backwards by unindenting it. We have an extra squiggly bracket here. Doing some pretty big refactoring, and then we just need to go into our interface and fix this. So that is in Couchbase service. So let's go to that. We can right click in Visual Studio for Mac and go to I here, and we can just take this config out. And now our config signatures should match. Let's go back here, go back to our, where were we? We were in the Couchbase service, and no more red squiggly lines. Let's debug again. Let's see if we can get it to the point where our API works. So we've done a little bit of refactoring here, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to get rid of handling how to grab the bucket. And we're trying to use the dependency injection framework to do that for us. Because once again, we're trying to get some free code. it just means, oh, what do we see here? We say it does not implement. Oh, our mock service is screwed up now because the mock, I forgot to go through and update that. And actually, I'm going to use, I used to work with a guy named Jason, and he is probably one of the smartest developers I've ever met, to tell you the truth. He's pretty awesome. He wrote some books on like the compiler, Roslyn and stuff, and does a lot of stuff with auto, like the code generator stuff in C#. And so he's got a new mock framework that I want to try out. And I think we're going to try that out tomorrow, actually. Also, we're going to go through and try to get our first mocks working. You can see here, they're just all to-dos. You know, they're not done yet. So that's one of our next things to do. Once we get our controller and we get like one feature kind of where we think we have it working, then we're going to go back and write some unit tests, and that'll become our like blueprint of how we write other features, because we'll have a good understanding of like, these are the frameworks we're using, this is how we build features, and then when we go through and start adding the next feature, which will be point types, it'll be a lot easier because we already have something to go off of. We know what frameworks we're using, we know how our code should be formatted, the styling for it, the folder structure, all that kind of stuff. So that's what we're kind of doing right now. We're going through, I used to call this when I worked at EY and a couple other places I worked, we used to call it Sprint Zero, where this is where you usually kind of set up your project and you get it up and running. Now, I'm not 100% happy about the fact that we have a warning now, so we're going to go look at that warning afterward. I think if you remember, if you remember right earlier, I was kind of saying in one of the previous streams, never let warnings pile up, because you won't be able to know a bad warning from a good warning. So your goal is to never have warnings. And I've literally gotten to the point where a team will call me in to help them out, and I open the code, go look at it, compile, and there's like 400 warnings. And it's like, well, this is a needle in a haystack at this point in time. So don't let your warnings build up. Let's go ahead and execute now. We've got, I'm debugging the app. Let's see if we actually can talk to the database and get a response back. And it looks like we got that response back. We can even do this by canceling and refreshing this page. Ooh, let me try this out again. I want to grab this GUID and make sure this GUID's in my clipboard before I refresh, just to make sure we can validate the API is really working. And we can go look at the logs inside of the Visual Studio to also validate this, because it should be showing up there. But if we execute, that's new data. That just ran. 1959.02 is right around, so that would be right around before 4 o'clock my time. And if we look here, we should be also able to go into our application output, which, boy, can't wait for the new version of Visual Studio, because I totally did not want it to do that. And this is one of the things that just is not great about Visual Studio for the Mac right now, is these I don't know what they call these things even, these widgets that they have that, you know, you can kind of bring up and stuff. They're not based on Cocoa, the native platform, so it's a little bit, they're tricky to use. So if we look here, we are getting a random exception here that is not cool. But if we look here, we can see this is telling us that it went into the cluster. So we can see some logging there for that, and the debugging. So that's giving us a good sign that we're definitely working. But we're getting a lot of this. I'm not sure why we're getting this private core lib. That's definitely something I'm going to put on my list of something to take a look and research while we're getting this. Doesn't seem to be like it's harming the application, but it shouldn't be happening. And that's kind of weird. So we'll probably have to research what's going on with that. Let's take a look at our warning now. What is our warning? The system method lacks await. Because we haven't done anything with our bucket schema yet. I suppose we can kind of do that here. We want to make sure that well, right now we're just using default and default, so I think we're okay there. We can just say, I think we can say return task.completed task, and that will get this off our back, this monkey off our back. I think that will work. That'll keep the warning from happening. That is not to do. Add code to auto create our collection and scope. Our scope and collections, vice versa. Collections live inside of scopes. In long term, what we want to do is we want to make our documents not in the default collection name. We'll want to make it where the user profiles, for example, go into the user profile collection, and that the point types go into that collection, and so forth. And we'll make it where collections are almost like database tables. So we know we're going to have to do this. And eventually, when we go get the we might go get bucket scope and collection, we'll have to pass this in. We'll have to know per repository what we're looking for. But to get ourselves started and just get ourselves an API up and running, this is a good sprint zero activity to get ourselves up. So at this point in time, we've done quite a bit of refactoring, and we went through and we've got the Couchbase service where it's using the Dependency Injection engine. We're no longer hard-coding the user in. Instead, we have it inside of our configuration here, which is a good quality of life improvement. Now let's take a look here. So I think now that we have this, we should probably take a look at adding in our methods for adding a new user, for example, right? That'd be kind of nice if we could add a new user. Let's take a look here. So we have our repository, our base repository, our user profile repository, and our user profile repository. And these are our ability to add things into the database. So right now, we can find a document, but we want to be able to add a document. And we have no idea what kind of document we want to add. And we want to know when we get a document added, whether or not it worked or not. So I'm trying to decide here. I don't remember if the one thing I don't remember is if the document do we want to return a bool that says that the document was saved, or do we want to return something that basically tells us that gives us the document back itself, that it saved it, and so that you get the document just back from it. And so that's the interesting concept here. I'm gonna look. I think the API just inserts the document. I don't think it really that it does anything outside of that. So if that's the case, then what I think we want to do, so we'll make a task. We'll call this domain base, because we're going up. Actually, let's make this bool. And then that way we'll know if we have to throw an error or not. We'll just say, we could make this a tuple too. We could make it where we return back both an is error, and then you already give me the document though. My argument is if you already give me the document, you're getting nothing for getting it back. And that's where doing an update, which will work different. So let's do this. We'll just do a bool for right now, and we'll say create document. And we're going to take in a string of the document ID. And then we're going to take in the domain base document. That's going to be our basically our generic method here. So we're going to say we don't care what type of object you're trying to say to the database. If you give us a document ID, let's go ahead and just create that document. So now what we have to do is we have to go into our base repository and implement that, because otherwise it's going to be mad here. So we're just going to go down here and add that in. And we just need to make this public async. And I've been doing too much Kotlin because I keep, oh boy, and this thing doesn't align the schoolies right. That stinks. Bool is error equals false. Return is error. Hey, look at that. Let's add in a try and catch. And then we can just say catch exception X. Boy. The fact that this is not lining up is really making me sad. I'm doing a lot more typing I need to type. So let's see here. So the Couchbase base repository does not bring in an iLogger. And we'll probably want that because if something goes bad, we'll want to know iLogger of type base repository. And we'll say logger. Right, that's how we're doing it. Let's go check our... Where's our Couchbase service? Yeah, iLogger. That's right. I don't know why I'm second guessing myself here. And then what's going to have to happen is we have to do a using on that. So let's go find our namespace. There we are. We should make a reference to that. Private read-only iLogger of type base repository. And we want to make that logger. Okay. Why is this man now? Can you not do it on an abstract class? Oh. Then we'd have to do it like that, right? That's what's going on. We had to tell it the generic of what we're doing. Domain base. Now it should be happy. Wow, look at that. Puppies, kittens, and rainbows. And logger equals logger. Hey, we've got another one of these to-do things we can take out because that to-do said add to iLogger. So if we have issues, we can report it. Look at that. We're killing to-dos on top of it. We're being productive here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say is error equals true because we're going to tell them, hey, something went wrong. We're also going to log this exception. So we're going to say logger dot log error. I do believe it takes two things. It takes a message and then something else. So we can just say ex dot message, and then we can also say ex dot stack trace. I like stack traces. All right, so that'll give us our logger, and we're almost done here. So now all we have to do is say, well, ooh, we're going to need more than just that. Now I think about it, when we create a document, we almost need the same information because it's generic. We need to know the bucket name, the scope name, and the collection name. So we need more information. That's a good point. So let's go find our iRepository where we define this. We're going to add some properties in. We're going to bucket name, scope name, and collection name in because we're being lazy. Okay. Oop. I should have kept that open. Go to declaration. We'll keep that open because we may need that again. Now let's go back to base repository. So now in here, we need to add in the ability to say, hey, look, you have to send us this information. Now, but we won't need the bucket name per se. Oh, because Couchbase service. No, we won't need the bucket because Couchbase service. Ooh, so this gets interesting. Couchbase service. Let's take a look at this because we may have a design flaw. I may have a design flaw. As I refactored, Couchbase service takes in a gems bucket provider right now, so it knows the bucket name. So because of that, we no longer have to send it the bucket name because of that it just knows it. That's what the bucket provider does. So in this, we don't need the bucket name anymore because we're going to inject that into the Couchbase service. Now, the real problem is that this would only work with one bucket then. And if we had multiple buckets, that would be a problem. Now, I don't plan on supporting multiple buckets right now. And what we could do is we could make this a couple different ways. One, we could inject in all the different bucket providers, right, that we need inside the service, and then send the bucket name in, and then select it based on that. And so we could do something like here, for it says iBucket, we could say, you know, if bucket equals bucket name equals bucket what is it? It's a variable name. Gems bucket provider, gems bucket provider dot bucket name. Then we do this. Or then we could say, or we could do a switch statement on the bucket name coming in. And if we have multiple providers, we could handle it that way. So we could, in fact, that will give us the ability, we'd have to inject in each one of those buckets if they come in. But honestly, we're going to have to do that no matter what, right? I mean, that's just the way it works. I think we're okay right now. Let's put this here. Else, we want to throw an exception. Else throw new exception valid. So right now, if somebody sends me a bucket name that's please add bucket provider for name, and we can say what's the bucket name coming in as bucket name. So we can say bucket name, and then we just need to make this a string interpreted that. And now what we can do is basically say, hey, look, we're gonna go in, get our buckets and stuff, and that's gonna be cool. However, if you don't send me the right bucket name and I don't have a provider for it, throw an error on it. Now this is flexible enough where if we have multiple buckets, we can support that in our code. We've made a nice generic implementation here. And of course, if there's multiple providers, we would have to inject it into the Couchbase service. So that solves that particular problem, and that will make that good. Now, if we look at base repository, we could still support this multi-bucket theory, is that maybe I don't know why we'd have multiple buckets, but since we're trying to make this super generic, we can now say, just send us the bucket name and we'll send it back down. And I think that's going to work. So what we need to do is we know get the we need to go get the tuple just like we did here. So we need to go get the bucket. We know we'll get the bucket, collection, and scope. So what we're going to do is we're going to say then var collection, just like we did up here, result.item 3. And I want to say you can name these in the new versions of C#. I wonder what language we're defaulting to. Let's get this finished written, and then we're going to take a look at that. Now what we can do is we can say collection dot, let's see, insert async. We're going to say we don't, let's see here, T domain base, and we're going to say it's going to want what? It wants the ID, so that's going to be document ID. It's going to also want the content, which is what we're calling document. And we need to await this. And that's it. So if we take a look here, we've literally written 2 lines of code and it adds a document to the database. That's pretty slick. And it's super generic. Technically speaking, as long as we know the string ID and you send us any document that's based on this domain-based object, you could just add this to the database. You can even give us different scopes and collections. Magic sauce. And if we get some kind of error, this doesn't work, we'll catch an exception on this and then we'll throw something. So let's see here. I miss Android Studio. I've been doing a lot of Kotlin. A lot of times you can hover over it and it'll tell you what exceptions it throws, and then you can handle those exceptions specifically. And if we go to declaration, I don't think this is going to tell us that though. Yeah, it's going to tell us this, that we have a insert in here, but it doesn't tell us, like, even when we go look at the source generation for this, it's not going to tell us what it does. And what exceptions it throws. We'd have to go look at the implementation of iCollection to find out, what it's doing. And that could be in a couple different spots because of that they could have it broken down. For right now, we're just going to say system exception is good enough for us. And if we had to, we can go look at the documentation, look up what other exceptions happen. One example could be if the collection doesn't exist, you could just go and create it and then insert the document, right? And so that's probably, let's put a to-do to that, actually. To-do, check if collection and scope don't exist, and if so, create them. Nah, that's a no, let's think about that for a few minutes. Let's not do that necessarily hastily, because we're just asking it to create a document. That's its only job. To me, if the scope doesn't exist and the collection doesn't exist, this code should have never got called. Something else should have been going through and making that first. And that could mean there's a bug that I accidentally passed in the wrong name, and we don't want it necessarily creating new buckets and scopes and collections if that's just a bug. Somebody put the wrong thing in. So I'm not 100% convinced that's a good idea either. So let's instead hold off on that. So this should work. We should now have the ability to create documents inside of the base repository. And because of that, user profile should also be able to do that. And that means we should be able to create an API for that. The one thing I wanted to look at real quick, let's see here. Let's keep track of time here. So it's about, we're only about an hour, a little less than an hour into this. So I think we have some time. Let's go ahead and go into our edit project file. So I know this looks scary, but this is our project file. Let's go ahead and make this minimized. Every .NET developer should eventually know how to read one of these. You can see here I have nullables turned on, so that gives me the ability to use the nullable feature. And these are the Nuget packages that we're referencing. So when we go into UI, it does that. One thing you can put in here is you can put the language version you want. And so one thing I don't know is I don't know what ASP.NET 5 C# language default. I'm going to search Google real quick. What is the default language for this? For .NET 5, it's C# 9. So we should be able to use C# 9 syntax inside of this particular project. Let's keep that in mind because there is a bunch of new things that we can do within that syntax. So a couple things I'd like to do eventually is clean up this code a little bit, make these methods names a little bit easier to read for people that have laptops or smaller monitors. So we can just put all of our things on one line here. That makes it super easy to read. Let's see here. Just do that real quick. And then we'll go make our controller. Actually, we need to make our feature and then add it to our controller. So that's going to be something called a post. We're gonna basically go in and make a post to the API that goes through and creates it. So that's our next goal. So let's see here. Actually, there's two things. There's a put and a post. A put, if I remember right, put, and I always get these backwards. So post, one is for update and one is for insert. Now, let's see. I always get these backwards. HTTP REST put versus pull post. And I want to say post is put is post is used to attachment. So they're saying create a new device and then update it. So post is the create, and then the put is the update. I don't build APIs that often anymore. I've been doing a lot of mobile stuff lately, so gotta remember too. So we're gonna say, crap. Not necessarily have to memorize all this stuff. You have to just know where to find the answer. So post is the create new. that's what we're going to do next. We're going to make a feature that will allow us to post a new a user to the system. So let's look here. We got features. We got user profile. We got get by ID. What is our naming convention? We probably want to look for this. Let me look. Once again, when you start making these kind of things, naming convention becomes really kind of important. We're kind of, I think we've already kind of made the decision here. We're using create document. Like if we look in there, that's CRUD. And that's create, read, update, and delete. And since we're kind of coming to that terminology, I think we should use the create word. So what we're going to say is new class. Nope, not new class. We want to make a new folder for our feature. So we're going to go ahead and say new folder. I'll say create, this is a user. Do we want to add anything else? Create user command, because this is going to be a command that we pass it. So that's cool. So we got to create user command. So now we're going to need 3 things instead of 1. Normally we have, if we go look, boy. And I know when I pin this, it makes it way bigger. And there's no way to make it smaller. Like, you can try to grab it, but it's like not grabbing for me, the little thing to make it smaller. And I've tried a couple different things. Oh, there we go. Guess you just have to hold it down and drag it. That's not very intuitive at all. All right, if we look at a get, we have a request handler and a query, because that's what we're querying. We're asking for something, but now we're not doing that anymore. So we're going to need 3 things. Okay, we need a command, and the request command is going to say, do this thing, add this user, for example. The handler is going to actually do that work, right? So the command is going to be, what user do we want to add in? Okay, the handler is going to say, I need to do that work. Okay, I need to add that user in, figure out how to do that. And then the validator, that's something new, because the user is sending us data. We need to validate that the data is correct. Say, for example, if they don't send us a valid email address, we don't want to add them. We want to basically throw an error that says that's bad, right? Well, if we genericize that out, then that'll make our lives easier. Just make a validator. Okay, so let's make 3 classes. Let's make a new class to start out with. We're just going to call this request command. And then we're going to go in and make another thing, another class called request handler. And then we're going to make a third class called request validator. Now for the validator, we need to make sure we have a Nuget package called Fluent Validator. That's I remember that from last time I did this. That makes life way easier. So we're going to say that we have a request command here, and there is a base that you have to inherit from. I think it's just called iRequest. Just call it iRequest. And we would have to tell what type of request we're taking in. We're taking a user profile. Yeah. Make that nice and easy. All right. And then we need to go in here. We need to. No. It is domain objects. And now what we should be able to do is find that core domain objects user profile. There we go. All right. Now, what we're going to get a REST API. The post would not have the it's not going to be in route, because the fact that technically speaking the ID hasn't been created yet. That's the put that you put the ID in. So for this, I believe what we're going to do is we're just going to put all the stuff in the body. They'd send us all this stuff in the body. So we'll say from body, and this is where the data is coming from. if that makes sense. Inside of HTTP, we have to send it somewhere, right? We can request it in the route, which is in the actual get string and stuff, or we can have it in the inside the body or in the headers, for example. So we're going to call this public string. We got to look at the user profile object to see what we need here. In fact, we can just kind of do this, and we're going to cheat a little bit. Where was our request command? But we don't need these to be nullable because we know that they're going to give us these. And they're going to give us this and this. And why is it bad? Must contain a null value when you create it. Nullables. Not sure how that's going to work out for us. We'll find out in a little bit. But we need also the main base, because these will also be sent to us. Now some of these will calculate. We'll know the created and modified on, we're not going to have them send us. We want these. Because if you think about it, we can calculate the date. They shouldn't tell us what date it is. We know the date from the server. And so we're just going to add in these 3 lines. Put some spaces. Oop. And then I like to put my key, or what my primary value is, at the top. Boy. That cut and paste didn't work that well. So I left that one there. Okay, that looks good. So we have a command that says, hey, we're going to take in a document. This is our document. We want to go in and create this document. So that's going to be our command. So we have 1 of 3 done. So our validator is going to be interesting. We'll probably want to Google I'll need to Google the, I never remember the record expression for email, and honestly, you shouldn't either. Just go look it up. It's way easier. So let's see if we have, I don't know if we have the fluent validation. Using fluent, oh, we do have fluent validation built in. Sweetness. So we can just say that this is a request validator and that it inherits from abstract validator of type user core domain objects user profile. Okay. In this, we need one method called request validator, and we're going to take in nothing. And because the fact that, oh, for frick's sakes, come on, frick's sakes, because we have a generic, it's going to come in. We can use lambdas, and it's going to know what type of objects we're sending it, and it's kind of magic sauce. We just have to use their Fluid API that they have. And so, for example, there's a method called rule4, and in the rule4, you just give it a lambda for what field. Now, it knows the field because of the generic up here, which is pretty cool. And so now we can just say, for example, surname. The rule for surname must be mean, and this is where this thing just totally rocks. Not empty. That seems like it's good. We can say minimum. It must be a minimum length. So we're going to say that every surname must have at least 2 characters. And we're going to say max length. I've saw some bid names. I'm going to say that there's no name bigger than 200, though. That doesn't make sense, right? And so we can make these rules that basically go through, and this will validate the data. And if the data doesn't meet these rules, then it's going to give us the ability to throw an exception. So we could say given name, and we'll probably use the same rules. Let's see, given name, not empty, and minimum length of 2. Your name has to be at least 2 characters. Your max length needs to be 200. Can't have a last name that's longer than that. Now we have first name, last name. A user profile also has an email address. I think the latest version of Fluid Validator also has something for email built into it. Let's go and check that. Pretty sure it does. Not empty. And then let's see, email. This is pretty cool. Look at this. Huh. They have something built in for email. Yay! Yay us! Look at this. We're gonna have a bunch of free code here. So we could do that for not only this, but we know that the created by and the modified by, technically we don't need both those. We only need one, because modified will be big, because it's a new record, it'd be created by. So let's go fix our command. That's actually an error that I didn't think about. We'd only ask them for the created by, because modified will just set to the same thing. So we want to do the same thing for created by. Rule 4 r dot created by. We're going to say that this cannot be empty, and that email. So we can just take the same line and come paste it up here, put it down here. Magic sauce. Look at that. And then let's see here. So we've got that. We need our ID. Woo, that's probably the most important. Rule 4, and we're doing r dot document ID, and the rule for this is it cannot be empty. And we can take any kind of document ID we want. We really don't care as long as it's unique. So we'll just say that not empty is the only rule we actually care about. We have validation done. Look at this. We've got a pretty decent amount of validation done for our creating of something. Let's go ahead and save that. Now the last thing, got our domain base open still. Let's close a couple of these. We can close that. All right, so we have our new request handler. That's going to be for the command. This is where the rubber is going to hit the road, because we need to be able to create something. So let's see here. We're going to need to be able to send in a couple different things. So if we think about this, we can borrow this a little bit from our last handler, because it had to do some stuff, right? So we can, let's minimize this so we can get two windows open at the same time. So one thing you could do is you can kind of take these and drag one over here so you can have both open at the same time. If you have a bigger monitor, this is my favorite way of writing code, because it allows me to compare code left to right. Now, of course, this is a little bit trickier because of the fact I'm on a squish screen, because of the fact I'm trying to do this stream and make the code readable, but this is a pretty cool way to write code. So, what do we care about first of all? So one, we need to make a request handler. Well, we don't have a request handler here. We're going to take in, I think it's an iRequest. Is it an iRequest handler? Now I'm second guessing myself. No, I'm pretty sure it is. It's a request handler. So let's see here. Doesn't care if it's a query or it's a command. It's still something that has to be done. So we're going to take in an iRequest handler. Okay. Now iRequest handler is of type the command, right? Well, the command we know was our request command. And then we also need to know type of object that we're sending in, and that's a user profile. Boy, that's the only thing that stinks about this is that the ability to when you have two tabs open like this, you don't have a lot of codability, flexibility in your code. So a lot of times you have to kind of make these one of these smaller than the other. Now, user profiles, because we know it needs to be core.domainObjects.userProfile. Now, the whole reason why this thing is really mad is because the fact we haven't implemented the method that must be there. So that's the implementation of do the actual work. So let's go ahead and just do that and create it. And you'll see here, this is going to make our life a little bit easier. Now, we can't make one of these things without having some objects that we can use. So we know that we have that repository that we made, right? Do we have a method in the repository to do this, though? Did I skip a step and forget to do the repository? Probably did. Let's take a look here. So, nope, we have create document, and create document is part of the base repository, so that should work. So what we should be able to do is bring in the user repository, even though we didn't add, undo. Let's see, come on, undo, there we go. So even though we didn't create the method, we created it in our base. Because we're creating our base, we get it for free, basically. So let's go ahead and I think we can just bring this back over here now because it's getting really hard to read with both those on the screen at the same time. Let's see here. So let's go back to our other handler here. First of all, let's go in and add some namespaces here to keep this happy. So this is core.domain objects that user profile. And now what we need to do is we need to make one of these. So we need to say, just going to copy this line. Then tab this over once. And then we can just say, we don't want the underscore there. We're going to say repository equals repository. And then we also need, we should have an iLogger. iLogger. And we're going to make this request handler. And we're going to say logger. Just in case something goes wrong, we can log it. I said to add the using statement, and you didn't. Let's try it a second time. Second time's charm. Private read only iLogger of request handler, and we want logger. But we want that lowercase. That's only hit upper caps lock. All right. Magic sauce here. We need to say logger equals logger. Now we should have rid of all of our squiggly lines, and we have our two references we need. So first of all, we're going to do a try. Oh, man. This thing doesn't work right. Boy. It can be really frustrating. Why would it? We're going to say logger dot log error. We'll say ex.message and ex stack trace. We could probably make a base class and do that so we don't have to do so much work. And we can say here return null. Can we return null? Represent the increasing option and return a value. Result. Possible null references returned. It's probably going to want me to make that nullable in order to return that nullable, I'm pretty sure. But let's start with the obvious here. We're going to say request. And if we go into request, we should have all the fields, right? So from this, we should be able to make a user profile. So we're going to say var user profile. Let's call it new user profile. New user profile equals new user profile. And I think what we can do is the new hot syntax of this. Then we used to say document. Put the parentheses first. Document. Oh, I know why. Core domain objects that user profile. It doesn't know what type of user profile we're talking about here. Document ID equals request dot document ID, and this is something that you'd normally could get a mapping framework to do for you, or even like a factory. You know, we could probably even should I do a factory method off that, off the request, off the command. Oh, I could do that. that command. Just thinking that if I had the command just give me the command knows it's of this type. And so because of that, why can't the command just give me a new one of these? And just say, because it's an interface and it's not going to have it on there. That's why. Because we're implementing iRequest and it's not going to know about that method because it's not part of the interface. All right. Never mind. We'll just make a new user profile. It's not like a lot of line codes here. It's not like we're killing a unicorn or anything. Document ID equals request document ID. We want to say created. Where are the fields for this? So let me close my user profile object. Get super. Well, shit. It's just easier to write these in. Let's see. So document ID is the first thing. Then we have surname and given name. So given name equals request dot given name. Surname equals request dot surname. So those are the three fields. Oh, email. Email equals request dot email. What else do we have? We have created by equals request created by. Now we're gonna say modified by. We're gonna request dot modified by or created by because it's brand new. Then we're gonna say created on equals date time now, and modified on equals date time now. That should have a user profile. And we should be able to then, now, but I don't remember. I just remember that I need to fire off, the validator, or I think does it do it automatically. Let's see what happens if it. Let's see if it does it automatically or not. We'll find out in a few seconds here. I may have to look at the Fluent validator. I don't remember the documentation if it fires automatically or if there's something you have to do, because Fluent validator I think is as long as you wire it up right, should be pretty close to built in with Mediator. I remember last time I did it was not a lot of work to get this working. Let's see here. I think so. All right, so let's go. We need to then, so now we have a user profile. We can just basically send the repository. We say var result equals repository dot create document. We're gonna send it the request dot document ID and the user profile. New user profile. And we forgot to wait this. And why is it mad? Oh, it needs the bucket name and stuff. Ooh. That's a good point. Well, this is be where we'd have to have the configuration because of that this is a. How did we do it in the get? I'm just curious. We hard coded it. So we're going to hard code it here, but that's going to be a to-do to fix. Why is it mad now? Document ID, a user profile, send a user profile, a wait. Oh, this method's not async. That's why. Oh man, there we go. We need to say, no, the request handler should validate that via validation. But I made those in the command not be nullable. Yeah. That's why it's mad. You know what? We're not going to do that. We're going to do this and set it equal to... Yeah. We're going to base these to... If somebody doesn't post them in, we'll let validator take care of the fact that they're not right. So we have validation. So we can do this, and this will get past the nullable. And that's actually is terrible. It should be string.empty. This is better, probably way to do it. Not have to deal with nulls is so important. Nulls are the #1 bug in most code. Not #1, but pretty close. All right. We can create a new user profile. We can send it in. We can get results. And, wait, what? We don't want to send a new one of these back. We want to create, oh, that's what it does. So, that's because the signature for the, for a mediator, the request handler sends one back. So, you know, if result equals if result should be a boolean. So if it's not true, then we need to throw exception. We'll have to make some custom exceptions eventually, but for right now, we'll just make a use system exception. Use system. Because that way people can handle it. Document wasn't created. Please check the logs for details. All right. Now, technically speaking, else. Boy. That will make it happy. Oh boy, I could really cheat. I really could cheat. I don't like cheating though. The problem is I'd have to pass in a nullable user profile to have the method be nullable. I think I have to do this. And then if I do this, I think this becomes legal. And then when we return null, it's legal. Yeah. All right. Well, we're not cheating. We're going to do it the right way. We're embracing the new nullables in C#. That's important. So let's see here. It's we got about half hour. So we should have a request handler, a request command, and a validator all set up. Let's just build it, see if this works. We wrote a lot of code. Close some of these down. The reality check's always if it builds or not. Build all. And we'll kill any warnings before we go in and make our controller. Put a clear line in the sand before we get into controller. And the controller code should be pretty small though. Ah, there we are. So we have there's no argument. So we inherit from base, and base is saying it does not take that. So what does base take in? Oh, we have to take a logger in, I bet. It takes in a logger now. Yeah. So we would say logger of type user profile repository logger. And we should probably make this a little bit easier to read for everybody. So we can do this. And then say our base is logger. And then the only thing we have to do now, the only thing is we have to make it so that it needs to know the logger is based on a base repository of T domain. And so we would say base repository of user profile. Does it need logger first? Of course it needs a logger first. That's why I like Kotlin. You can tell it the arguments. You just basically say argument names. You have to worry about the orders. Kotlin is pretty awesome. You know, can you do that? Can you say logger equals? Holy crap! Game changer. When did this service? No. What's the other argument name? Couchbase service. I stand corrected. It looks like C# does allow you to give the argument names in. C#, yay for you. Good, look at you go. You're cool as Kotlin. Cool as a cucumber. Look at that. I'm pretty happy. I won't put this on online. Fits on here. All right. That should get us the ability to build. Let's go ahead and build again. Let's see, and it's about 5 o'clock here, so we've got about a little bit longer. I think we can get this controller done before we call it a day. Build succeeded. Okay. So the last thing we need to do is go into our user controller now and use all this crazy stuff. So we have to go back to remember that when we're building APIs, and I may have to, I don't want to Google this again, that we need to do, it's a post that we care about right now, not a put. That's the, and so do I remember the syntax or something about the action that you need to do in a post. Let's see here. Let's go look at an example. There's something about the action that's important. Oh, good Lord, I'm not signed in. Let's do Couchbase examples. I shouldn't care if I'm logged in or not. And, ooh, boy, that's small for you guys. Let me make that bigger. And then let's go with ASP.NET Quick Start. I know the guy that wrote this. That's me. I wrote a good chunk of this. Actually, I think I wrote all of it. Yeah. If I remember right. Once again, it's been a while, so forgive me here. Post. So we need the post option, but it's from body. So this is the syntax we need. I wasn't able to get annotations working last time for Swagger, and I wasn't sure why that was breaking, but this is what we need. So this is what we're going to do. Now, of course, this example I wrote didn't use mediator and stuff. It was the core basic, quintessential, just how to get something talking with Couchbase. So at the time, that wasn't in the requirements. So what we're going to do is say, we know Swagger doesn't work because we don't have the annotation library working. And we know it's not that. It's the, we're going to say it's, what was the feature called? It was called create user command. We'll call this class command. Okay, try. You already got a logger, so we can put at least 2 lines. We should probably just have a base class that does that. Let's do that private. What's the status code? Is it an integer? It's called status code result. Where it's taking an exception. We can even make that static, to tell you the truth. No, because we need the logger. Can't make it static. So we're going to say logger dot log error ex dot message ex stack trace. And we're going to say return status code 500. Look at that. We got a generic method. Now we don't have to remember what all this stuff does. We just say, hey, get error status code ex, and we're good. One liner. If I want to change my logging out to do things different, magic sauce, whatever that is, done. I can just do it that way instead. Oop. We want to return this. There we go. So that gets us our error. Now we just need to do a response. Var response equals await mediator send. Look how easy our code becomes. Request command. And then we can just say if response is not equal to no, and then we can just say, actually we just need one liner. Return this dot okay. And actually there's a better way to do this. Return this dot okay. Else return get error new exception response was null. Okay, so there's a better way to do this though. And I don't remember, did I do it over on the other one? So the better way to do it is that you can just route somebody back to the created. Yeah. This is the cool way to do it. And I want to say this is just built in ASP.NET. If I remember, I didn't do anything. It just did that. Yeah, it does, because ASP.NET's pretty cool. It comes with a bunch of stuff. Yeah, so this is the syntax you should be using when you create something. So let's go back. Where was that? Yeah. I don't always remember the syntax for each one of these platforms I write for. So instead, we're going to do this. Return created. Now this we could have in a static. We can say private read-only API route equals no string of API route equals API slash v1 slash user profile slash. So that'll be our API route. That way we don't have to hard code that in here, and then we can just say oop. And I think the slash is already built in, and then we're going to say response dot document ID. And I'm going to say Yay, there we go. That's a better syntax for it. I just have to make sure that that has the slash in it. Here's the whole thing, folks. If you're using the slashes for URLs and stuff, slash versus not slash, pick one and always do it the same way. Because if you sometimes do your like this, and then other times do it like this, you're just going to be asking for a world of hurt. It is not a healthy thing to do. So pick one and stick with it. Either don't do it, like for example, if I don't do it here, then always know when it comes back, you have to add the slash. That means here, I'd have to add the slash. That should be it. Rock and roll. We got done early today because I was only expecting to get create done. Gonna drink some water here. See what happens. We got 2 APIs now listed. Holy crap. Life is going pretty cool. Let's go ahead and refresh this one right here. We can post a new user profile. Let's try this. Try it out. So I need a document ID. Where is my GUID generator? There is one that is built in the Visual Studio. Yeah, there is. Where is it? It is under Edit? Tools. There is an option to automatically build GUIDs in here. It was literally talking to somebody on Twitter about this, and they were talking about it. Do you know? It wouldn't be in here. I think it'd be under Tools. Insert GUID. Well, that's not what I wanted to do because it's going to insert it into the text here. So I'll just grab one from a web page. But that's cool, just so you know. The insert menu has the ability, edit. What was that? Edit. Wait, help. GUID. Oop, I'm in Chrome right now. Get back here. Help. Yeah, there it is. So yeah, edit, insert, and then there's GUID. And it'll generate you a new GUID. That's pretty cool. So let's go back to our web browser though. And go here. Add our documento, give a name. Well, let's see here. Bill Gates. Bill Gates at Microsoft.com. Clippy at Microsoft.com. Clippy created him. That seems about right. Let's see what happened. Crossing our fingers here. That's a long time. That's a long time. So we got an error, a 500 error. See if we can figure out what happened. So let's start with mediator to see if we can see whether or not the handler is coming up. The way we do that is we need to go in here at our breakpoint. Right here. And then go back and do another post and see whether or not we're getting there. We are getting there. Okay. So let's go in and we want to put a breakpoint here. See if our results coming back or not. Take this breakpoint out. So what's result coming back with? Result comes back with errors true. So that means we're not getting a document. And we actually can see here, we're getting a Couchbase exception because of the logger. Document exists. Like what? What? That's blowing my mind. Let's go look at Couchbase server. Create documents. It did create our document right here. There's get Bill. That's weird. Okay, let's give it a new GUID. Okay, well, that is not turning out the way we thought it should turn out. So let's go in here. So now we know that it's somewhere in our repository that's broken. Let's go to base repository. Let's see if we can minimize some of this stuff. Bring this down. Bring this down. This error is false. If there's an exception, it becomes true. Otherwise, it should be false. All right? Let's put one there. I find this kind of weird because if it works, why would it be true? Very curious. All right. Let's make this Bob Gates, Bill's brother Bob. Clippy also added him. All right. What? Let's go to the next line. Okay. If we're not result. So if result is true, okay. Oh, because I have it backwards. If result was true, then throw the exception. Wow. Look at that, folks. It's the not symbol getting me. Well, on the flip side, we got 3 documents in the database now, because if we go back into a get, actually, if we go back and look at the database now, Bob should have also got created. Oops. Let's go into retrieve. Yeah, we got Bob, Bill, and who's the last user? John Galloway. Sure. Really cool people. Then we do, what's his name? Mr. David. Damian Edwards is probably, I should give Damian more credit. Damian's a good guy. Let's see here. So let's try that. Let's create another user because we are now there, and I think it's going to work this time. I think we have fixed our bug. Let's go in. Back to Swagger. I've got a Chrome window open here. Just so you know, I'm grabbing free goods from this website that I have open in the Chrome tab. So I did that because of the fact that we were not working with actually, let's refresh this and make sure we have the latest version of the page. Shouldn't make a difference, but let's do that. Ooh. And then let's see, we need another person at Microsoft. Damian, I think that's how you spell it. Edwards. Damian Edwards at Microsoft.com. And we'll say Clippy Microsoft.com. Created it. Damian's a pretty cool guy. Father of Signal R. What do we got here? So we can take these breakpoints out now because we think that this is working. Let's just take those out and continue. Go back to our web browser. There it is. There it is, folks. And here's the cool thing. We got back. And here's a cool thing. We're getting the location back. We're sending back the location of where, if they want to get this user, they can get this user. That's the cool user. So the thing that we're looking at is like, wait, what? Look at this. See this location? That's coming back from, if we go to our controller, because of the fact that we called that created method. Right here. We do created, and we give it the path. it will then return that back to the location, which is super cool, which means now you have the path to go get that record if you want it. In fact, I can just grab this. Now, the only difference is whether or not they should send us a GUID versus we don't let them to send a GUID. Right now, the document ID they're sending in, and we're not auto-generating it, right? That's the argument to be made here, is that should we have that internal? And should we basically not allow them to send the document ID in, and instead we create the document ID on the fly? And our API just says, no, you want information stored, we'll store it and we'll send you back the document ID for it. That makes it a little bit more, and it comes on to security, right? If you want to be able to controlling how the document IDs are created and guaranteeing they're not getting duplicated by accident, who's the responsibility of doing that? Is GEMS the responsibility of doing that, or the people sending us the data? It's a good question. I think we should long-term probably generate the document IDs ourselves and have them be auto-generated GUIDs. Guarantees chance of documents not getting duplicate IDs passed because some other system, you have 5 different systems talking to it. So that's what I believe we should do. So based on that, we have some code to do. That won't be that hard to do. So let's take a look at that. Let's see if we can fix that last part. So that's going to require some refactoring. So if now that we've got both the ability to put a document in the database and get a document back, we really have to do delete and update. But more important, what we want to talk about is the fact that we want to make it so that we don't get the document ID from people. We generate it ourselves. So how do we fix that? Well, it's pretty easy. In the command, we don't take it from the body. And then in the handler, and this is the advantage of basically having all this code in the same feature folder, is that all of it's right here. I know what to fix this feature. And so one of the reasons I wanted to do this is to show you that, hey, look, if we put all of our stuff in the same spot, I don't have to run around looking where the heck is all this code at. Well, I have to know here that all I really need is a new GUID. So I can say var document ID equals GUID.new GUID. I think that's a method. It is. And now we can just say document ID, and the same thing here. Oh, toString. toString. Kotlin used the lowercase methods. And now we can say document here, and the same thing here. Magic sauce. That's it. 2 lines of code to fix this and make it so that we generate the document IDs now. And now I don't have to go to the internet and get those anymore, right? That's a advantage to me. And that should be it. So let's go ahead and rebuild. And we should have our auto-generating document ID. And then if we want to get one of those records, the theory would be is all we have to do is look at the API that's coming back, because the API should tell us that. So now we do have to refresh this because the schema that was created will no longer have the GUID in it here, as we can see. So I had to refresh it to see that new schema update. But now if I just say given name is bugs bunny, and bugs is bugs bunny at warnerbrothers.com, and we're going to say created by we'll say who should Elmer.fud at warnerbros.com. I'm probably spelling all these wrong. It's really bad, but let's take a look here. That should create it. It should give us a GUID back. It did. There's our GUID back in the location, right? And now I should be able to just take this GUID back And of course, we send back the document ID inside of the document that we send back, right? So you're getting that in your response body. So you know now the ID and the data that you created. So you know that information. However, if we want to go get our get API, now that we have that, we can just go in and put this new document ID that we created in magic sauce. There's Bugs Bunny. And if we go to the database, we should be able to see Bugs Bunny there. Yeah. And Bugs Bunny's right there. There we go, folks. We have created documents. And we've done a lot of stuff today in our API for ASP.NET. We swapped out how we talk to buckets. We're now using the Nuget package that Couchbase provides. It makes it easier to get that information. We've went through and we've refactored our code a little bit. We added some command in for the first time. One thing we didn't do is we didn't do validator. Let's see if the validator is working. That's a good point. But we made a command. We went through, updated our controller, did some refactoring of our code, killed off a couple of our to-dos on our list of making our code cleaner. And now what we want to do is we just want to make sure, let's refresh one more time. We added data validators, and I don't remember in Mediator if I have to tell those to call, which I think I do. Let's try this out. Let's say one, blah, and blah at blah.com. See, it created it and it shouldn't have. So that's our problem. We didn't, somehow the validator didn't go through and validate the data. So we created a validator, but we're not calling it. And that's going to be our problem. Let's see here. Mediator ASP.NET fluid validator. Here we go. Let's see what I forgot to do. It's saying to create a pipeline. No, I don't remember how to do this. This seems like it's remember having to do a pipeline. They're saying did I do a pipeline? I may have to look at one of my example projects to see whether or not I've done this, but I do not remember doing a pipeline. All right, well, it looks like I need to research this a little bit, folks, and figure out this is really what I want to do. Yep, that's what we just did. That's what we did. We did all that. Okay. We did a command. Says this is where it says the CQRS pattern. So it says that you have to make a validation behavior. It kind of makes sense. I think you only need to make this once. And since it's taken in the generics, it works. And this allows you to build a custom error message that comes back. Yeah, let's see, what time is it? It's 21 after. Do I really want to experiment with this today? Yeah, let's save this for next time. So let's do a to-do here to get this working. we'll actually put this documentation in the to-do also, so that we know where we left off. And I'll look at this tonight and see if we can add it in tomorrow, because I'll be streaming again tomorrow. Let's go in here. Add a to-do. To-do. Fix fluid validation by implementing pipeline for it. Let's see. So what I've been doing every day is when I stream, I've been checking my code in. So if we look here, I have got open space here. So let's see here. I have changed a lot of code. Why were you saying that? Oh, it's spinning. So what happened is that the branches will be the name of the date. I'm not sure why it's mad. Let's try to open this up again. Kraken is new tab. Come on, get Kraken. Yeah, sometimes get Kraken is just not behaving right. Open repo. Okay, get Kraken. We'll just close you and try to open you again. What I was going to show you is that I've been going through and creating branches for each day of the stream. So if you want to go see the code for the end of the day, you can kind of a stream, you can go do that. That way you're not looking at like the final result like 2 months later when you're watching this video on demand. I'm finding a lot more users watching this video on demand than a live stream. I'm sure that has to do because of the times and stuff. Let's just go and open this repo. I recently opened is let's see here. This should be in developer Couchbase. What? I'll have to go fix this. I'm not sure what's going on here, but it's saying that I see the source directory. It was changed. That's right. All right. Well, I'll figure out what's going on, but I'll check the code in a little bit here, and you should be able to have access to it then. And it will be branched with today's date for today's updates. I will be streaming again tomorrow. If you're watching this video on demand, you'll just go to the next video. But these should all be in categories and stuff. If you're on YouTube, I hope you're all staying safe there. And I look forward to seeing you